Today, I want to talk about a show that I genuinely believe is the best show I've ever watched. In terms of the best. Writing wise, character dynamic wise, and the fact that it's based on a real period in history just adds to it. And it's a time that I didn't live through. I wasn't alive during the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. And so I think it is, but a lot of people were, and a lot of people died. Loads of people died, and it's important that that is taught to us, and it's not taught in schools in history lessons, and it's rarely taught by parents. So I think it was really important that this show got made, and I think I'm really glad that I stumbled across it and decided to watch it when it aired, then rewatched it last year, sort of just had it on in the background, and then this year decided to, I'm actually going to sit down and actually rewatch this thing. Instead of just, having it as background noise or some doing the hoovering or watching it when I was 16 and didn't really understand the story and the beats and everything like that. Now I can sit down, watch it, and genuinely give my thoughts on it. It's important to mention here, I'm reviewing this full series in one video. I went for a while I was debating, should I do episode by episode, but then I thought it's just like no one really wants like a episode by episode analysis, and I'll just be saying I like this, because I love majority of this series. So I'm going to do it all in one video. There's so much of this series that I love that I haven't put in here or forgotten about, because it's been about a month since I watched it. But I loved all of it. And I'm not able to say everything I want to say because we'll be here for hours and hours and nobody wants that. So I'm just going to give my thoughts on the big standout things, and I'm going to try not to get really sad. So we will try and go through chronologically. So we'll start with episode 1. And I really love how much of an insight to all the different characters we get in the first 12 minutes or something before the first ad break. When you go into that first ad break 12 minutes into the episode, you've seen an insight into all of the characters' lives. So you've got Richie, who is moving away from the Isle of Wight, moving away from his family to go to university in London to study, is it law? I think it was law he was studying before he switched to acting later on, or drama. And his parents seem like the traditional mum's got less power than the dad house situation. You know what I mean? The dad seems to be the man, he's in control, and everyone really just does what he says. And that's present from the off and does get backed up throughout the rest of the show, as well as Russell T Davies, who wrote the show, coming out and explaining that that's very much the point he was trying to get across. So we've got Richie, who's in this sort of toxic household, whilst also moving out of it the next day to go to university in London. And he's a gay man. He is not out. He is closeted. He has not told his family anything because he knows the response that he's going to get. Heck, he got the response, like a very verbally abusive response, when he told his dad that he was switching from law to drama. Let alone that he's not a straight man, he's a gay man. He would have got absolutely destroyed for that. So it's very fair. It's understandable. Then we get Roscoe, whose family know he's gay. Roscoe is gay and his family know he's gay. But his work friends don't. He is a construction worker, I think, or like an apprentice or something. I'm not too sure. And his family don't understand. His family know he's gay, but his workmates don't. And he has to pretend he's like straight. He's like, I saw that girl over there. She was really fit, to his work friends. And then he gets in the car and his dad's questioning him about being gay. Roscoe then pulls a runner. He runs away from his family because his uncle's coming to take him to, I think it's Nigeria, to basically go through a camp of like conversion. And he basically comes downstairs, tells all his family to piss off, and then he runs away into the streets, heads off to London, and later on meets Richie and our third main character, which is Colin. Colin is literally just your average Joe. He's moving into a new house to stay there for a while. There's a family he moves in with, I believe an older woman who I think is the mum of a younger boy who also lives there. And Colin just wants to work. He gets a job at I think it's a tailor's place, or just, it's not really relevant what the job is, but it's somewhere there, where he meets his boss, Mr. Coltrane, who is played by Neil Patrick Harris, who is a brilliant, brilliant character. Before we move on to him, I want to just also say about Colin, how he's labelled Lovely Colin, because he is so kind and so sweet, and he doesn't sleep around. The whole group, right, apart from like Jill, who's the female friend of the group, all of the men, really, in It's a Sin that we see, the main characters, sleep around a lot, which isn't a bad thing. I almost knocked some water over there. It's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. My point here is, remember that he doesn't sleep around a lot. That's Colin's thing. Anyway, he gets a job at this place, and he meets Mr. Coltrane, who is a higher up of the job. Is he the boss? He might be the boss, I can't remember. And it's a really, really great scene where Neil Patrick Harris's character sits Colin down and basically says, "Are you gay?" Now, he doesn't trap him. He does go like, "Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have another friend, boyfriend? Do you want one? Do you not have any? Do you not interested? Whatever." And Colin says, "No, I like men." And Mr. Coltrane invites Colin round to his house. Mr. Coltrane has a husband, right? They are a partner. I'm not actually sure if they're married. And this is such a great scene where, it's so good. Basically, Mr. Coltrane's husband or partner says to Colin, "When my mother comes to visit, there's 2 bedrooms in this house. She stays in one of them, we stay in the other. What's she supposed to think?" But she doesn't say a word. And I love that. And I was genuinely in the bath and I was like, "Oh, this is so good." That is such a good scene. Now, I might not have done it justice there if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, watch that scene. It is brilliant. It's beautiful. It's class. It's amazing. I love it. And I find it just really nice. Because a lot of the time you see it with Colin's mum later on, parents just want their kids to be happy. That isn't always the case in this show, which I'll get to in a moment as well. That's pretty much episode 1. Obviously, Mr. Coltrane does actually die at the end of episode 1, and his partner does as well. They both get AIDS and they die. And Colin, they're all getting interviewed at the end. All the main characters, they're getting interviewed about their future. And Ross goes like, "I want to be rich," and Richie's like, "I want to be an actor. I want to be a movie star, and I want to be happy." And Colin's just like, he's like, "I want to get a house and see all the beautiful flowers, and I want to live my life just like Mr. Coltrane told me." And then it just cuts to Mr. Coltrane dead in his hospital bed. And we also, I haven't written it down, but we do get a glimpse of what life is like for HIV patients in the 80s. And it is like they've got to wear like hazmat suits. People have got to wear hazmat suits before they come in and visit them and stuff. And it's really, really, it's just so sad. Now we get onto the episode that was personally the hardest for me to watch. And it's episode 2, and it focuses on the character of Gloria, whose real name is Gregory, but they call Gloria. They sort of name everyone a different name. Gloria, obviously, after the big song of the 80s, not to do it, but Gloria, Gregory. And the whole middle part of the episode is Richie's birthday. And Jill finds Gloria working on the bus. Gloria works on the bus, and he just works on the bus. And Jill's like, "You coming to Richie's birthday party?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come." Then, later that episode, I've mentioned who Jill is. Jill is the friend of the boys group, and she's an absolute saint because she helps out Gregory in his moment of need. She gets called up while she's at university by Gloria. Gloria and Gregory are the same person, by the way. This might sound quite confusing, but yeah. Gloria basically says, "I need you to come and help me." Jill goes round and has to help bring in milk and bread and stuff for Gloria whilst he's getting better. And they have a chat about why he's ill. And he is like... And it just shows how confused people were at the time because they didn't know. It seems stupid that there's a disease that can only infect gay people. How does that work? But that's how it started. And they didn't know what it was. Was it a cancer? Was it HIV? Was it a disease? Did it leave marks on you? Did it not? And there's a great scene where Gloria's there and he says things like, they say it's cancer, but I haven't got cancer. That's what AIDS is. It's cancer, but I haven't got that. So I'm better. I need to just take some off work, focus up and get better. And he's saying this with no certainty. And Jill's looking at him like, I think we both know where this is going, but she helps anyway. She goes and does the food shop. She cleans up for him. And there is a scene later on where Gloria comes round to the Pink Palace, which is the flat that all the boys live in apart from him. And he comes round to visit because he lives on his own. And Jill, there's a great scene where he drinks out of a cup. And Jill cannot rest at night time because Gloria wants his AIDS to be a secret from the rest of the group. Only Jill knows. And so they don't realise sitting around him that he's got AIDS. And she's thinking, well, his lips have touched that glass, so I need to go and clean up the glass. So there's a scene of her soaping up the glass, rinsing it off, rubbing it, making sure it's clean. Gets back into bed. She can't rest. She needs to get up. She cleans it again. Back into bed. Cannot rest. Gets up. Cleans it again. Back into bed. Realises, I can't deal with this. So she smashes up the mug and puts it in the bin. Now, I'm pretty sure I've heard Russell T Davies say it's actually not a thing. Like, you can actually drink out of the same glass as someone who's got HIV. It's not spread through spit like it once was. I'm not a doctor. Please just Google that before you do any detail. But from what I've heard from Russell, that is true. So let me actually just Google that because I'm worried now I'm giving out loads of false information. Yes, so Google says, yes, you can safely drink out of the cup, the same cup as someone living with HIV or AIDS. So yeah, it's not spread that way. But back then, how were they to know? You know, so I don't blame Jill at all for that. And I actually think it's quite a nice thing she was doing. She was trying to protect her friends who she lives with, whilst also protecting their other friend by keeping this diagnosis a secret. Then we get to the end scene, which is so sad. Jill pops round to Gloria's house to, you know, pick up the post or drop off some milk or some bread, and she gets there and Gloria's not there. Well, actually, I think Gloria is there actually to start with, but Gloria's not alone. His family's there, and his family shoo her out and say, no, you can't help here, go away. And she goes. And that's pretty much it. Gloria gets taken back home, looked after by the family. And then we never truly get word on the death until the end of the episode, where it cuts from Richie and Jill doing they do a cover of Only You by Yazoo, which is on the karaoke at the time. And it cuts from that, being all happy and smiley, to Gloria, dead. We don't actually see the dead body, but we do see flames, and this hits me harder than a dead body, which is flames. A big backdoor garden fire. Back garden fire, I should say. Back garden fire. And within the fire are school photos, IDs, anything that has a remote trace of Gloria on it has been put into this fire and is being burned. Because that family want no trace. They want to make sure that any label of that person is gone. And that is why it gets me so hard, because when we move on to, I mean, spoilers obviously, but when we get on to later on when Colin dies, that's really sad, don't get me wrong, and I did feel really sad about that, but Colin's mum was so lovely to him and gave him such an out, and that was brilliant. But when it comes to Gloria, that was it. There was no love. There was just burning the things when they die, and there's no remembrance. Memories are all they have of Gloria now. And that's why it hits me so hard, because that is probably the reality of a lot of people who were ashamed of their family members for their sexuality back in the 80s. And that's why it hits me so hard, because they don't even want the memory. They're that embarrassed of this death that they don't even want the memory of a family member, which is just horrible. It's horrible. It makes me so sad. In episode 2, Colin also gets sacked from his job after his boss finds him reading about HIV and AIDS. It's more deep than that, but I don't really want to just explain the plot synopsis of that. You've seen it, you know why he got sacked. So in episode 3, Colin gets a new job, and on the first day of him opening up on his own, he has a seizure, and is immediately rushed to hospital, with the doctors reassuring him, you can just have one fit sometimes and that's it. You'll be fine. So Colin goes back to his normal life, but still feels quite ill. And then he has another seizure, which these seizures are very hard to watch. The actor who plays Colin does a very good job of them. His eyes roll back, his hands wave about, and it's really difficult to watch. I remember being quite scarred when I watched it for the first time, because I'd never really seen something like that before. And yeah, this is the episode where Colin dies. It's it hits hard because he's Colin. He's lovely Colin. He doesn't sleep around. Remember I said this at the beginning? He doesn't sleep around. He's Colin. He doesn't sleep around. He just gets on with his work and he's happy. He fancies men, but he doesn't really act upon it. We then find out that Colin slept with one man, and that is the man who he moved in with at the beginning. The, I believe, son of the woman whose house he's moved into at the beginning. And now, originally I thought this was a forced sexual act and that Colin didn't want to do it, but upon rewatch, I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure it was consensual from Colin, which, I don't know, I'm struggling with that a little bit. I can't remember. Like, you can view it at the beginning as like he's being forced to do it, but then he does seem like he likes it. So I'm not too sure if that was intended to be like an assault on Colin or if it wasn't. Either way, let's just assume Colin was up for this. The only person that lovely Colin slept with was the person to give him HIV, which turned into AIDS, which killed him. That was horrible. But I do want to give a big shout out to Colin's mum. He had a really caring mum who loved him lots and was very accepting of him and basically said, look, Colin, I don't care if you're gay or not. I want to make sure you live. You live. That's the important thing here. You need to live. And then he dies. And she's distraught. And that's the end of episode 3. And then we get on to episode 4, which is probably the easiest because it doesn't feature a death. This is, I think, the only episode of the show to not feature a death, unless I'm misremembering. Not a major death, anyway. But it is the episode where the main character, Richie, finds out that he has HIV. And he has AIDS. And in doing that, he decides to go back to his home of the Isle of Wight, where we then get more evidence that his dad isn't a very nice person because of the way he acts in this episode. And Richie goes back to the Isle of Wight for one sole purpose, and it's not to see his family. It's to see his old crush from school that he fancied at school, who is a straight man. And Richie basically unloads this on him and says, look, I'm gay, I loved you at school. I used to watch you at school, I used to think, oh, he's so fit. And it's a scene that gets uncomfortable because Richie, being Richie, goes way too far with it and actually makes the guy feel uncomfortable. Which, you know, it's not uncomfortable because, oh, gay, oh, but it's uncomfortable because, you know, Richie went quite graphic with it. But we then get Richie's dance, which is one of my favourite scenes in all of television ever. Richie gets out, they talk about ballet earlier on and how Richie took up ballet, and after this big tense moment where Richie's, you know, made the guy uncomfortable and the guy's like, I'm taking you home now. Richie gets out of his car, stands in front of the windscreen and does some ballet. And the score from Marigold just hits. It's harrowing. And Richie, at this point, we know Richie's going to die and Richie knows he's going to die as well. And he's doing his ballet and then he runs off and that is so good. Tears everywhere. Tears everywhere. The end, and there's also a weird subplot with Roscoe. And you're probably thinking you haven't mentioned Roscoe a lot. Roscoe has a weird subplot where he's going out, or he's constantly seeing what's his name, Stephen Fry's character, who I've forgotten the actual name of, but it's played by Stephen Fry. That subplot didn't really interest me that much. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say I don't want it to be there because I'm sure it did a lot, and it was quite entertaining, and I find the resolution of it quite entertaining. But I don't really get it. If I'm honest, Stephen Fry basically does deeds with Roscoe. I believe they are actually like having sex at the time. I don't think it's explicitly said in the show, but I think it's like hinted at they are having sex. And basically this guy loves Margaret Thatcher. The guy Roscoe's seeing loves Margaret Thatcher. And Roscoe then finds out, as Stephen Fry's character is about to meet Margaret Thatcher, that Stephen Fry, his character, isn't actually gay. And that he's sort of one big game to him, and it's just something he does on the side for fun. And Roscoe being furious at this, and obviously Margaret Thatcher isn't, from what I can remember, allegedly Margaret Thatcher isn't a big fan of gay people. Roscoe decides to do a big fat wee into Margaret Thatcher's pot of tea, which is just a great ending and a big nice thing for Roscoe. I do love Roscoe as a character. Like I said, I don't think the subplot of his story interests me as much as the others, but it's not bad. I'm glad it's there. It's enjoyable. I wouldn't cut it. You know what I mean? I'm glad it's there. So it's not really a complaint. It's just not as interesting for me. But I was in the bath whilst watching these. I watched all these episodes was in the bath, so I couldn't like doom scroll. That's purposely why I did it, because I was like, I want to actually watch this thing. And I'm quite good with not looking on my phone. Like I've just rewatched Queer as Folk for the first time since probably 2019. So I'm watching that again. I haven't been on my phone as well. So I like to watch things these days, which is why I do these reviews now. And yeah, anyway, the end of episode 4, I think, is one of the greatest scenes ever. Basically, Jill is going to the big march outside of the Margaret Thatcher thing for, like, you know, gay rights and stuff like that. And Roscoe basically bins her off and goes, look, I'm hanging out with Stephen Fry's character. Anyway, Jill's getting attacked. Roscoe comes along to save the day. We pan up from the police officer who's attacking Jill, and it's Richie on his shoulders, and the score just blares. Richie's theme from Murray Gold just blares. It's so loud. I need to move this water out of the way before I knock it over. But the theme just blares, and Richie's on the police officer's back. He's got a bloody nose. Jill's covered in blood. They get thrown into the back of a police van. And this is where Richie has to reveal to everyone, I've got AIDS, because he's bleeding. He's like, you can't touch me. Don't touch me because I've got AIDS. You might get the AIDS. And it's sad. And Richie looks straight at everyone and just goes, look, I got some news. I'm going to live. And then we get episode 5. This whole episode is just a sob fest. And this is one that I did rewatch on its own. So when I watched the show initially when it came out 5 years ago, I actually found myself rewatching this episode about a year or two later, because I remember it being such an emotional hit in the gut. This entire thing is so sad. And I'm going to start with one that I always find triumph and genuine connection more emotional than sad. And a scene that made me genuinely feel so, like, emotional was the scene where Roscoe's dad is in the hospital with gay patients. And Roscoe confronts his dad and is like, if you are here to convert these people who are dying, you are sick, you are evil. And Roscoe's dad looks at him, and I've got the exact quote, and Roscoe's dad says to Roscoe, look, forgiveness is hard. And Roscoe says, oh, I don't want your forgiveness. I don't want your forgiveness. This is who I am. I don't want it. And Roscoe's dad cuts him off and goes, no, I'm asking you to forgive me. Because Roscoe's dad went to Nigeria and he saw how they treated those people. And he realised, so what, my son is this way. So what? I hope that's how it was intended, because otherwise I look like an idiot for not understanding it. But that's how I took it. And it just feels so amazing how Roscoe's dad has just said to him, like, please forgive me. The way I treated you was horrible. And please, can we move on from this? And that scene is just perfection. It's perfection. That whole character of Roscoe is brilliant. Like I say, his arc over the thing lost me a bit, and I was like, I'm not invested in this. But that made it, like, that just solidified every character's importance, and it was just amazing to see that. It really was. And then Richie's parents come in. Richie's in hospital now because of the AIDS, and Richie's parents come in and find out that he's got AIDS. And Valerie has a little chat with Jill, and Jill basically is like, yeah, Richie's gay, and Valerie's like, no, Richie's not gay. It's just men. They like to go around and do all these things in the bedroom, and like, this is just another thing. This is just another chance to get off with somebody. There's no such thing as gay. Gay just comes along to take you over for one night, and then you go back to normal. And Jill's like, oh, maybe some men have that, but then you get Richie, who is gay. And then an old woman comes in who's, I believe, has a patient of her own in there, who's like a family member. And she basically says to Valerie, you didn't know Richie was gay? Where have you been living? Mothers are supposed to worry about their sons 24/7, 365. They're supposed to be looking at them and thinking, oh, what are they going to be doing? Oh, I hope everything goes all right for them. If you didn't see that, where were you looking? What were you looking at? Wow. Good scene. Brilliant scene. Brilliant scene. And then basically Valerie realises, yeah, maybe I'm a bit of a cow, and decides to take Richie back to the Isle of Wight to heal himself there, or to heal him there. And basically she's a massive knob to Jill and goes, Jill, you can't see him. And Jill keeps ringing up and she's like, please, I want to see him. He's my friend. I've lived with him for like 10 years now. And Valerie's like, no, no, sorry. And so Jill and Roscoe protest, and they're like, right, we're going to the Isle of Wight anyway. Well, we're going to the Isle of Wight. I don't care if she doesn't let us in. We'll bang through the door. And the most heartbreaking thing about this is Richie constantly asks Valerie, can I see Jill? Or like, Jill was just on the phone. What did she say? And Valerie's like, she sends her love, and that's it. And Richie wants to see Jill, but Valerie won't let Jill see Richie because of pride. She's willing to let her dying son die without seeing his best friend so she can have her pride of, he's my son, he doesn't need you. That just completely sums up some people in this world and is done so, so well. And then finally, Valerie meets up with Jill on the seafront and basically says to Jill, I might have been wrong, you know, might have been wrong. Maybe you should see him. And Jill's like, yeah, no, I just need 5 minutes just to say hello and give him my love. And then Valerie just says, he died yesterday. He died. And there was no one with him. We get a nice cut to of her downstairs. His dad's not in the room. It's just Richie on his own. And he dies in his bedroom with nobody there. And that is heartbreaking. And then Jill delivers this amazing speech, basically mirroring what one of the nurses said earlier that episode. So the actress who plays Mandy in This Country plays a nurse earlier in this episode. And she basically just says, these people in these wards, they're dying of shame. And Jill basically vamps that up and relays it back to Valerie and just says, like, these people who you turn your nose up at, they're dying in their hospital beds. They're sat there on their own. There's a reason they're on their own. They're on their own. And a bit of them in their head thinks, this is right. This is how it should be. Because people like you go around spreading all this stuff and they think they deserve it. They sit there and they go, this is right. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. They die of shame. They die of shame. They don't invite anyone to come and sit with them because they're ashamed of how they're dying. And she delivers that to Val and walks off. Jill walks off, and then the final 5 minutes of the entire series is a montage of everyone getting together at Christmas and everything like that. And Jill goes and she tells Roscoe about Richie's death, and Roscoe starts crying, but Jill remains calm. Jill and Roscoe go and tell Ash about it. Ash was like a close boyfriend of Richie, like a almost boyfriend. Ash starts crying, Roscoe's crying, Jill remains calm. They tell everyone. Jill remains calm. Then a gathering comes around, everyone's crying about it. Jill remains calm, and then Jill's parents come in. And then Jill starts crying. Because Jill is the mum of the group. She's the same age, but she's the mum of the group. And so she needs to remain that higher power, that I'm going to make sure these guys are okay before I can take time to let myself feel this sadness. And then she sees her mum. Her mum comes in, and she realises, okay, now I don't need to take charge of this. I can let myself go here. And she just starts bawling. And it's so, so well done. And then to top it all off, we get another montage. The montage fades out. Back in the hospital, Jill goes into the room of a patient with HIV or AIDS and is dying. And there's nobody else there. Jill pulls up a chair and she just sits with this person. She holds their hand. She lets them know that I'm here and you'll be fine. And she doesn't overtalk. She doesn't say anything. She just sits there with them, comforting them. And that sums up Jill so well. Jill is the true superhero of this program, and she's based on a real person called Jill Nolder, who plays Jill's mum in the show. And I've seen many interviews with her, big friend of Russell. And Russell couldn't even change the name of the character because of how impactful she was at the time. So big ups to Jill Nolder in real life and Jill in the show, obviously. And then we get the final scene, which is a flashback. Everybody's there. Everybody, the whole gang's on a bench. Gloria's there. Colin's there. They're on the bench. Richie stood up in front of everyone. He's reciting his lines that he's going to be doing at his acting class. And he's got an ice cream. A seagull comes down, takes his ice cream. They all laugh. They all smile. They're having a great time. Great friends. And Richie does a bow after saying his final line. He does a bow, comes up, and that's the end of the show. And that is the best series of TV I have ever watched. This was more of like a synopsis of everything going on, but I wanted to give context to what I was saying in case someone out there hasn't seen the show, which, by the way, go and see the show, it's brilliant. But I did give my opinions on stuff in there as well. And the reason I'm doing this is because there's nothing really in this show that I didn't enjoy. Like I say, the only thing I was a bit like with was the Stephen Fry stuff, because I didn't really get what it was going for, but that's not to say it's bad. and I'm glad that it's still in there. But this show is just the greatest thing that my eyes have ever seen. If you haven't watched it, it's on Channel 4, 4 on demand is what it's called. So you can watch that with ads for free or without ads for like £3 or something. Or you can buy it on YouTube like I did. You can buy it on YouTube right here for like a £5 for the whole series. So definitely give it a watch. And yeah, it's just great. It's a great series with great characters, a great message, and it's teaching, like I said, it teaches someone like me who wasn't alive in the 80s about this thing that should be talked about but isn't, because it's gay. I guarantee you that's the reason why. It's not taught in history lessons because it's homosexual, and that is wrong. Maybe that's not the reason, but I believe that's the reason why. So yeah, that's It's a Sin. If you've seen the show and you like it, please let me know in the comments and we can have a little chat about it. Drop a like on this video. I will be doing more film and TV reviews very shortly. I've got loads just banked up that I haven't released yet, but I wanted to get this one out first because this is the show that probably means the most to me out of all of them, because I love it so much. So yeah, let me know what you think about It's a Sin. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, drop a like, like I say. If you didn't enjoy, drop a dislike, that's fine. Hit the notification bell. I'm going to try and post more often on this channel. For now, I've been Sam. I'll see you later. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.